Ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, let's talk some boxing. So what we're going to look at is Peter Quillin versus Andy Lee, my comments on it. Special thanks to Boxing Eagle 78 Sports TV. I was looking at their videos on their comments post-fight. I agree with some things, I disagree with some things. I'm going to break down the boxing aspect of this so you'll see where I'm coming from, okay? So Peter Quillin versus Andy Lee ended in a draw. I agree with everybody. I agree with the judges. I think the judges got both fights on the night, big fights on the night, correct. And you could have given it to Andy Lee. You could have given it to Peter Quillin, 7-5. It depends on what perspective you were looking at the fight with. The fight could have ended very, very quickly in the first round when Peter Quillin hurt Andy Lee, and then he dropped him a second time, but that was after the bell, so it wasn't credited to Peter Quillin. He also dropped him in the third round. But then Andy Lee came back. He got used to Peter Quillin's power. He was able to drop Peter Quillin in the seventh round, and Peter Quillin recouped very quickly, and the fight went on to a draw. However, Peter Quillin was the aggressor throughout the fight. He was the one that was stalking, and you know, not a whole ton of punches were thrown. And this is where I started to differ with 78 Sports TV and with Boxing Eagle, because honestly, guys, telling me that Peter Quillin should have thrown more jabs, what do you call this? He should have thrown more jabs, right? And to say that Andy Lee wasn't throwing much jabs, well, what do you call that? So they were jabbing. But just like with Floyd Mayweather Jr., just like with all of these intelligent boxers, they know when to use the jab and when not to use the jab. Furthermore, I'm tired of hearing people say, throw more jabs, like if that's the solution to the problem. In boxing, if you get predictable, guess what happens? Your opponent figures you out and then you're in trouble. So it's not just throwing more jabs. I even heard Peter Quillin's corner, his trainer, telling him, let your hands go. What on earth does that mean? What does let your hands go? It's about placement, and Peter Quillin was looking for openings, just like Andy Lee was, to be able to land shots, and also defensively make sure that shots are not coming back to you to get tagged. This was a high game of chess, man. So I disagree with Peter Quillin didn't throw enough jabs. Peter Quillin was doing even a more effective thing by backing up Andy Lee. And it wasn't just by throwing jabs. He was also using feints. Feinting as if he was throwing jabs. That's why when 78 Sports TV says there was a lot of posturing going on, I'm like, that's called feinting. This is boxing, okay? And I think a lot of people just don't appreciate the sport of boxing and just the craft that was going on. So I'll break down a couple things. First of all, Peter Quillin was fighting an opponent with a much greater range and a much greater reach than he was. That's the first point. A taller, rangier opponent who has incredible power and can use his same hand that he jabs with to hook you with. And this hooker just so happens to have tremendous power in his hook. Then he has a beautiful straight left. Okay? This is the fact. On top of that, the guy called Andy Lee has incredible recuperation power. You can hurt him as bad as you want. He can come back, recoup, and hurt you. So Peter Quillin's aware of all of these things. In fact, the two losses that Andy Lee had, which were knockouts to Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Brian Vera, especially the Brian Vera fight, you can argue that Andy Lee was not TKO'd. That he was going to come back and the referee stopped the fight prematurely. Go watch the fights. Go watch the fights. I looked at this dude. He's like a Marcos Maidana. He comes back, except he has a lot more skill and a lot better boxing ability. Now, what you guys missed in the fight was that Andy Lee kept on landing that beautiful spear jab to the body. He kept on landing, not a spear jab, sorry, just a normal orthodox jab to the body. He'd go low and jab to Peter Quillin's spleen. that was open for him. Peter Quillin would block it or knock the punch down, and he blocked a lot of punches. A lot of punches were blocked by both fighters. But that was his major body punch weapon. Peter Quillin was landing left hooks to the body and right hooks to the body when he could get on the inside, and he would land his straight right to Peter Quillin's pit area whenever he could get the opportunity. Of course, he couldn't be predictable, so he had to use feints to get inside on Andy Lee. So he would use feinting because he's not the guy with the greater reach. Andy Lee knew how to use his jab and was on the back foot waiting to counter Peter Quillin. So there was a lot of chess going on. It wasn't posturing, it was chess, where these guys were trying to feint a lot so that the other guy wouldn't expect when they're going to come in on them and surprise attack them. Okay? So when Peter Quillin had early success against Andy Lee, this is for 78 Sports TV, he said that Peter Quillin reminds him a lot in his movement and his stance of Felix Trinidad. I can see that. I agree. The difference between Felix Trinidad, though, and Peter Quillin is Peter Quillin's a lot more intelligent than Felix Trinidad. Peter Quillin moves his head when coming inside. He goes low to stay underneath your punching power. He changes levels, and then he uses explosiveness to get inside and land that straight right, a la Floyd Mayweather Jr., a la Pernell Whitaker, a la Bernard Hopkins, a la Andre Ward. Okay? That's the same thing he is actually doing. Very, very skilled. A la Erislandy Lara, a la Guillermo Rigondeaux. You're going to see that in a Cuban, slick, smooth style. That's how he got Andy Lee out of there the first time. Knocked him down. It was with a straight right coming from low. Change levels, go low to high. Okay? Andy Lee never saw it coming. He's trying to pivot out the way. I think actually a southpaw version to that was when Chris Algieri was trying to pivot out the way of Manny Pacquiao's straight left. That's how Manny Pacquiao knocked down Chris Algieri in the 9th round. That was the same type of punch. Okay? Chess match. You're always looking for that error in your opponent. And that's what these two guys were doing. They were like counter punchers. They would lead when they thought that their opponent would bite on the feint. Okay, so again, boxing's such a beautiful sport. There's just so much to say about it. But yeah, Andy Lee caught him with the right hook. Sorry, he's a southpaw. He caught him with the right hook as Peter Quillin was trying to land that straight right on him. Caught him with the right hook coming in, reaching in, and you know Quillin started to reach in. He was coming, and boom, didn't move his head enough. You know, he sort of dipped under, and so Quillin using Pernell Whitaker moves, getting low, getting out of there. Andy Lee brilliantly turning Peter Quillin a lot, and he started to move to Peter Quillin's right. So it's just a lot of different things, a lot of subtle changes in this fight. These guys were bringing new things to the table all the time. That's why Andy Lee was smiling sometimes. Sometimes he knew certain things. He could set up Peter Quillin for a certain punch. Other times he knew his movement was tricking Peter Quillin and Peter Quillin was going for it. Other times Peter Quillin would set up Andy Lee for certain punches. So you have to understand it's a chess match in there. It's not just about, you know, beating up people. You have to set them up for certain punches. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that for now. It was a great fight. Very intelligent fight by both fighters. Peter Quillin had, I think, 3 different types of jabs he was throwing in that fight. He mixed it up, and that's why Andy Lee got tagged every now and then, because he would get within range and use the different types of jabs. Now, there's a jab where you step in. Okay, you commit and you step in with that jab. It's like a power jab. I forgot the name of that jab. And then there are different jabs for different things, you know. And Quillin, he still has a long ways to go in the art of the jab, but suffice it to say, Quillin was using a number of different kinds of jabs. Andy Lee would use the basic jab, but he would go downstairs. Sometimes you mix it upstairs. Sometimes you mix it up with a hook. So that's what made Andy Lee very interesting. Again, I wish I could explain a lot more, you know, moment by moment what these guys were doing in the fight. But again, I just wish people would appreciate boxing more. So this is my response to those two guys. I hope you guys have a great one. And as always, you guys stay safe.